Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we'll be taking a look at this review copy that I was sent of Dark Streets and Darker Secrets, which is a rules-light street and sorcery role-playing game with an old-school spirit. Before we get started though, this video is brought to you by the Questing Beast Patreon. So thanks to all my patrons who have spent their time and their money supporting this channel and keeping this whole thing going. If you, dear viewer, would love to help support this channel as well, you can head down to the link in the description below to my Patreon page. Thank you so much for checking it out. Any patrons at the $2 level or higher are going to have access to preview documents of Maze Knights, the role-playing game that I'm developing as an update to Maze Rats. So let's get into this review. This is by Diogo Nogueira, if I'm saying his name correctly, and it is part of his series that he has done before. I've done a number of his reviews in the past, including his Sword and Planet RPG, Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells, and his fantasy one, Sharp Swords and Sinister Spells. So this is part of the same series in the sense that it uses the same mechanics that he has developed for all of those. Except this goes in a more World of Darkness direction. If you like doing things like X-Files, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or things like that, this is a good system to use. It has an old school spirit, so although it isn't OSR compatible in the sense that it has, six stats. It doesn't really work in that sense, but it has the play style and the attitude of the OSR. So if you enjoy a lot of old school RPGs, then you'll probably like this one as well. Here's our back cover. And let's get into the book here. I'm not going to go too in-depth with the actual system itself, since I've done that in the past with his previous books, and the system is essentially the same. The majority of this book is a toolkit, which is really great. That's a pattern that I've seen across all of Diogo's books, where he spends a good amount of information giving you the mechanics, but then what he really wants to give you is the tools and the material to flesh out a world and make a setting and adventures that your characters will love and that your players will love. There's 4 main attributes instead of 6, and there's a couple archetypes. You have the tough, the nimble, the smart, and the gifted, if you want to be a more magic type character. You have a complication that you start with, because, in any World of Darkness, it's a lot about, your personal vices and overcoming those or dealing with them. We have sanity and luck mechanics. We have a section on gear that you can choose. The stats for weapons are kept pretty straightforward. Like weapons are simply small, medium, or large. Even guns are small, medium, or large. I think that's a good decision. Instead of having to go through a giant list of different types of handguns and firearms and so on, which are, unlikely to have that much of a difference in gameplay. We have weird items, of course, because characters start with some sort of strange thing that can be woven into the game. Drugs and other substances, as befitting the grungy street level attitude. Services that you can hire. An encumbrance system that looks very functional. It's basically slot based, which is a sensible way of doing encumbrance. We have money and money points. So money is abstracted in this, where you can make money rolls to see if you can afford things. I think that makes sense as a way to do it. It's not my preferred way. I would prefer just to track the money. I don't think it's actually that difficult to do that. Abstracting money too much, I think, makes an important resource something that players don't really think about. That's just my personal opinion, though. Basic rules of the city, attribute tests. So it's a roll-under system, similar to what you might see in the Black Hack or any other roll-under system. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. We don't need to get into all of the nitty-gritty of the rules. As I mentioned before, see my reviews of Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells if you want to get into that in more detail, or Sharp Swords and Sinister Spells. We have rules for maneuvers, auto firing, fleeing, damage. Honestly, I think I would like the rules to be a little bit more condensed. He does a good job sort of giving you lots of examples and really covering all of his bases. But a lot of it probably isn't going to come into play too much, especially things like starvation, dehydration, and so on. Although it's good that those rules are there in case you need them. Sorcery and psionics. So now we start getting into stuff that's more particular to this setting. We have a big list of different backlashes, things that can happen if your magic goes wrong. Sorcery corruption. Psychic corruption. And a big variety of sample powers that you can start with. This is what I mean by a toolkit. Most of the rest of the book is going to be stuff like this, where he just gives you things to put in your game. This is very much an old school D&D tack to take. And at this point, it becomes increasingly frustrating when I read non-OSR books that don't do things like this, where the whole book is just rules or very vague setting information, rather than just filling the book with things that I can make, I can put into my game and that make my life easier. Power and its cost. So when you're creating your own arcane artifacts, which of course you're going to need in a setting like this, you have your basic artifact creator, who made it, in other words. We have the purpose of it, and we have powers along with a cost, because that's a great little twist there. Any sort of magical artifact you're using should always come with a cost to make you hesitant to use it. And a number of sample artifacts, like the Holy Sword of St. George, the Helm of Cosmic Despair, etc. Running the game. So the world is corrupt. So signs of corruption. How is your world corrupt? Why is violence rampant in your world? What are some signs of decadence? Roll them up and create a world that is uniquely grim and dark. Adventure generator. What is your adventure's goal? Discover a new ritual, explore the shadow world, find the truth, survive a supernatural disaster. Adventure locations you can plug into your world. Antagonists you might need. Supporting cast. Adventure complications. Adventure rewards. What are some themes of your dark city? Now we start getting into a very Maze Rats-like system where it's just table after table after table. Look up the stuff you need, roll on it, stick it in, move on. Excellent stuff. It just removes a lot of the mental load of having to come up with this stuff on the fly. Factions, of course. If this is a street and sorcery game, you're going to need lots of factions to deal with. You're going to need them to have relationships to each other, and you're going to need to have complications that evolve over time as these factions interact. They all have different characteristics. They have different objectives. Big list of names that you can use. Occupations for your NPCs. Objectives, traits, and hindrances. Appearances, methodologies. You can create very detailed NPCs by just going through there and rolling on those tables. Monsters in the shadows. Is the fight fair? No, and it doesn't need to be. That's my stuff right there. That is good stuff. Monsters should not be the sort of thing where they're designed to be killed. In a game like this, monsters that are designed to be killed, they are not frightening. Your players will simply disregard them, right? And they'll just mow through them. If you want your players to be scared, your monsters have to be scary, which means that they can kill your players and they can make them really think twice before just murder hoboing their way around your dark city. Dealing with opponents' morale, that's also essential. Random encounters, keep things unpredictable. Cultists, law enforcement, secret societies that you might want. Mercenaries and common people. Each with some random tables to keep them interesting and fresh so that they're not all the same. You got your werewolves, your fairies. This is basically World of Darkness, right? It has everything that you might need, except that it is much more compact and is much more useful and easy to run than most of the World of Darkness books. Ghosts, Lords of the Abyss, Elder Gods. You want to play a Lovecraftian game? This has got you covered. Alien invaders, failed experiments. That's really Lovecraftian. That's like straight out of Mountains of Madness, I think. My Lovecraftian knowledge serves me well. Monster Laboratory. Here we go. Technological level of these monsters. What is the alien culture? Its bestial form, plant form, ancestral characteristics. Is it undead? Is it mystical? Technological? An aberration? Demonic? And powers it might have. D100 powers. You're never going to run out of cool and weird, terrifying things to throw at your players by just going through this and grabbing things. Got some optional rules at the back too. So this whole book, oh, here's our character sheet in case you want to take a look at that. So you have your 4 attributes: physique, agility, intellect, and willpower. That's all you need, right? It's very straightforward. You don't need a giant character sheet. It just has the stuff that you need. I like how minimalistic it is, and it fits with the tone of the book very well. This fits right in with the rest of the stuff that I've seen from Diogo, where the rules are straightforward. There's a lot of detail in them, but you don't need most of that detail. Most of what the book is there is just to make your life easier. So if you are into this genre, this is a really great place to start. If you're into Diogo's books, then this is certainly a must-buy. A lot of the stuff is cross-compatible, right? Especially in terms of the magic and the sorceries and rituals and so on. You can easily throw that into a fantasy-type game. The whole monster creator, same thing. And the monster creator could also be used for aliens in a sci-fi game. So lots of crossover potential available here. All of his books work really well with each other. So if you're interested in checking this out for yourself, I will put a link down in the description below where you can see if it is your thing and buy it if you choose. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys next time.